Scrum Master, get over yourself. And that goes for you too, project managers. You are the least important person on the project, so you need to act accordingly. I know of what I speak. I've been running IT and consulting projects for over 30 years and definitely have been full of myself a good portion of that time. Eventually, I realized that while I was in charge as a project manager and getting paid high fees as a consultant, I was actually the least valuable and most replaceable person on the project. So let's talk about your lack of value. I once had a young Scrum Master working with me on a large project. This Scrum Master was constantly complaining about IT not delivering code quickly enough and there being too many bugs. I finally sat them down and made two key points. Point number one, there is no IT in business or us versus them. This is one team, all focused on a common goal. Everyone on a football team either wins or loses together. If the project fails, management isn't going to sift through the rubble trying to figure out what went wrong. They are simply going to fire the coach. Point number two. And on this football team, the Scrum Master was the water boy. It is a software project. The only time value is being added is when developers' fingers are on the keyboards writing code. Value isn't added in the stand-ups, and it's not added in the sprint planning meetings. Let's dive into the concept of value added a bit more. The concept of value added tasks comes from lean manufacturing. It means those tasks that add value to their customers. On a software project, the end customers are the users and purchasers of the software. Imagine you gave a customer the choice of buying two identical software packages, the expensive package and the cheap package. The expensive package is twice the cost of the cheap package, yet it had a fantastic Scrum Master on it. The cheap package had a lousy Scrum Master. Would the customer be willing to pay twice as much for the expensive package with the fantastic Scrum Master? Of course not. Therefore, the Scrum Master and their tasks are non-value added. The Japanese lean manufacturing experts would consider them waste to be studied and eliminated where possible. Did you hear that, Scrum Master? You're waste. So let's talk about adding value and not anger. Now, before you go crying into your Starbucks latte that you're waste, luckily for you, there is a second customer on software projects. That customer is the sponsor or the company management actually paying for the project. They are willing to pay for a Scrum Master if they can add value by building the software better, cheaper, and faster. Does the sponsor care how well the sprint planning meeting is run? Of course not. The sponsor only cares about results. So how do you build software better, faster, and cheaper? Well, you don't do it by being full of yourself and being an angry taskmaster. I was at an Agile conference presentation with two young Scrum Masters sitting in front of me. During the Q&A, one of them raised their hand and asked, if the developers on my project keep missing deadlines or don't complete all the user stories in a sprint, how do I punish them? The speaker was stunned. The speaker eventually answered that the Scrum Master's role wasn't to punish the developers, but to address the process issues that were affecting the developers' efficiency. The young Scrum Masters were baffled. They simply asked the question again for a second time. They didn't get it. Don't be like them. Can you imagine being a developer with 20 years of experience being called lazy or incompetent by a 20-something Scrum Master who's never written a single line of code? Trying to explain the technical issues causing the delay is probably a complete waste of the developer's time because the Scrum Master is not going to understand them. If you were the developer, would you be motivated to build software better, faster, and cheaper? Or would you simply be angry? So let's now talk about being supportive. If your job is dependent on building software better, faster, and cheaper, you'd better treat the only people actually building the software pretty well. Your role is to support them, not to whip them. And usually supporting them involves rolling up your sleeves and taking the grunt work off their plate so they can focus on coding. This usually isn't the type of work a glamorous, full of themselves Scrum Master is willing to do. It requires some humility and a willingness to learn. Here are some examples. Example 1, help test. Testing is the best way for you to learn the software and to understand technical issues. You'll also start to learn when a developer truly did screw up on something simple, like a null exception error. Not so you can punish the developer, but so that you can understand if they need additional training or you have true performance issues. Second example, take on simple administrative tasks. Developers can end up spending a lot of time on administrative tasks, especially to support testing. Many of these are easily learned tasks that don't matter if you screw them up the first time because it's in the test environment. So an example would be you adding testers' user IDs to the test environment. You uploading test data to the test environment. Or you editing test files are used for testing like JSON files. The next example where you can help out is by reviewing user stories. Review the user stories for quality before they're passed off to the developer. Are they complete and easy to understand? Are the acceptance criteria detailed and complete? This will save the developers from having to sort through the user stories and ask a bunch of questions before they can start coding. Next, offload as much reporting and configuration work as you can. Can you or someone else, like a business analyst, take on configuration tasks so the developers can actually code? Can someone other than developers write reports? Next, try to code. Get on the internet and take some classes on coding using a simple language like HTML or Python. Build a little program/web page and spend hours debugging it because it isn't working the way you want. This will give you an appreciation for a developer's job. And finally, buy them lunch. Don't buy them lunch so they can work as they eat at their desk. Buy them lunch to be nice. Sit with them, get to know them. Now let's talk about the fact that you're very replaceable. Eventually, you'll also realize, as I did, that no one is irreplaceable on a project. As I mentioned earlier, if the project goes south, the easiest thing for management to do is to try assigning a new Scrum Master. If you were a manager trying to get onto the golf course, would you want to stay late to listen to a Scrum Master explain all the issues that caused the project to fail? Of course not. You're just going to replace them and hope the new Scrum Master can deal with the issues. I can speak from experience because I've been replaced twice in my career. The first time, I was caught up in a large layoff at a large consulting firm. I'll never forget me marching into my exit interview with a well-organized folder of all my ongoing activities like sales leads and sales presentations. The partner didn't even look at the list, There wasn't anybody left to pick up my work, even if it mattered. I was going to walk out of that office and no one was going to even notice I was gone. The second time I was replaced, I was having difficulties getting the product owner and a contractor to stick to the project schedule. I made the mistake of escalating the issue rather than dealing with it myself. In the end, they didn't replace the product owner and the contractor. They replaced me for not being able to run my project smoothly. And by the way, the project ran fine without me. Okay, to wrap up. So get over yourself and become a better Scrum Master. Be humble. You don't add value directly to the software, and you're not irreplaceable. Be supportive. Do whatever it takes to make the team productive. If you get over yourself, you'll get your project over the finish line, and the project sponsors will be over the moon. Go get 'em, Tiger.